And we're live. Welcome back to another Corona Geek here, where we talk all about mobile app development using Corona SDK. I'm your host, Charles McKeever, and today we're going to talk about COPPA compliance and how you can protect yourself as a app developer from the FTC. They're hot on the trail of Apple and Google and Amazon these days, so we want to find out exactly what we need to do as app developers, game developers, to protect ourselves. So we've asked AgeCheq to provide us with some information, and Tyler Smith is here. Hey, Tyler.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I'm glad you're here. Tyler's the Director of Game Developer Relations at AgeCheq, so he knows all about this topic, and he's going to kind of help us understand how to slice and dice things. We're going to talk about some of the news headlines that have come out here in the last couple of weeks, and he's going to help us break it down and understand exactly what it means to us. Also joining us here is a whole host of brain power. Big Blue's got nothing on you guys. I tell you what, it's all over the place. Joining us is Brian Burton from down in Abilene.
Hello.
Brian, we talked about Brian's books last week on show, what was it, 98? Learning mobile application development, application and game development with Corona SDK. We looked inside the book. We looked at game highlights and things like that. So if you haven't checked out Corona Geek number 98, go do that. And if you haven't seen Brian's website, go over to Burtons Media Group, right? .com.
Yes.
And click on books, and he's got a whole bunch of Corona books there that are fantastic. Also joining us is Danny Glover, not the Danny Glover that you think, but Danny Glover from Gremlin Interactive. He's joining us today. And Danny, are you guys still doing the plug-in sale over there?
Yeah, if memory serves me correctly, it runs until the end of this month.
All right. So for anybody who's not familiar with what's going on over there, Danny's got a whole bunch of plugins, Amazon Ads, Chart Boost, Keep, and PayPal, and they're all half off, right, Danny?
Yeah, 50% off until July 51st.
So if you're into that, if you want to monetize your apps in any certain way, you want to put in some e-commerce and things like that, go check out gremlininteractive.com. They've got the plugins there, and they're half off. And you, at that price, you can, like we said before, you can buy the whole set. Just buy them. I mean, there's no restriction, right? There's no number of installs and things like that.
Yeah, that's been removed. So if you buy the plugin once, you can use it in as many projects as you like.
Sweet. So why wouldn't you? I mean, this is one of those, get it before it's gone kind of things. Why not just have it, put it on the shelf, and then when you're ready to go, pull it out and use it. Also slipping in there is Ed Marina from roaminggamer.com. Hi, Ed.
Hey there, just in time.
Just in time. And as always, we've got Greg Pugh from GP Animations working on his Matty Bear comic book. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got, how many drawings do you have now?
I think there's 29 daily comic strips, and right now I'm working on the cover of the book that I'll eventually put out when I have enough.
That's fantastic. Yeah, go check that out. MattyBearBooks.com. Greg's he's doing a daily comic strip, and he's going to put it all together in a book, and it's going to help, not only be another product in his arsenal, but also market his app and things like that. He's got a lot of very creative marketing strategies over there at MattyBearBooks.com. Go check out what he's doing. Also joining us is Jen Looper. Jen Looper with a wall of books behind her. I love that wall of books. Always. So jealous. Hey, how is your app going? Minute Stretches.
Minute Stretches is doing okay. I need to probably localize it, but and move it over to Android. But I've got a lot of stuff on the stove right now, so it's taken a little bit of a backseat.
Well, I'm glad you. That was perfect. I'm glad you mentioned that, because Chris Byerly, the creator of Coronium, he emailed me before the show and said that he's actually released a mod localize module, and it's basically for localizing your apps, and so if you want to increase your downloads, if you want to make sure that you're reaching as many people as possible, mod localize is available now for Corona SDK apps and games over at develephant.net, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes. But Chris has got mod pushbots, mod parse. I mean, he's just cranking it out over there on top of Coronium and all that other stuff that he's got going on. So, so thanks for that, Chris. Appreciate it. All right. Well, let's see here. Does anybody, before we move on, we kind of covered a little bit of the news there, but does anybody have any kind of announcements they want to make? Any kind of surprises? No? All right. Well, then we'll just move on to the topic for today. The topic for today is COPPA compliance. We thought this would be a good opportunity to talk about this kind of stuff because I don't know if you guys have been paying attention, but everybody's on Apple and Google and Amazon's backs. I mean, everybody from South Korea, really it's the FTC, but the South Korean FTC to
Europe.
Europe, yeah, all of them. They're just like I think they all got together and said, how can we make some money? That's right. Well,
Exactly what happened.
we'll mug these guys. No, but they've got a fair point. A lot of people are up in arms. I say people, parents specifically, are up in arms about in-app purchases and child privacy protection and all these other topics. And so it's become a hot topic. And if you were looking in the news, South Korea. The South Korean Fair Trade Commission says they forced the app stores to remove non-refundable clauses in hopes that policies will become a benchmark for other countries. So we'll put a link in the show notes to these articles. But basically, what's happening is there's a lot of the pressure coming down from the FTC in these different countries to kind of put things in place to either keep children from making unauthorized purchases or protect their privacy in some way. And we've talked about this several times on the show about how free apps aren't necessarily free. That's also a part of the discussion as well. Have you guys been keeping up on that kind of aspects of things?
There's a lot of, and that might be a good discussion for a future show, is the impact of freemiumware and that's a huge topic.
Oh yeah. Well, it's getting ready to change because this same article says on the Play Store, all Android apps have had their non-refundable clauses removed, and developers now are required to develop refund policies, and apps that automatically charge consumers at the end of the free trial period will no longer be allowed to use the label free trial. So, I think in the spirit of the original intent, it's a free app. You don't have to pay anything for it. But over time, I think developers have learned that, people will pay for something, but we can put out this free app, and then we'll ask them to pay for something at a certain point. So it's I think it's morphed over time. What do you guys think about that?
The really interesting thing about the whole South of Korea that actually took that a little bit farther is that they kind of put the blame onto the developer. So now you don't have a clause that you can say, well, we were trying, but it didn't work, and then it goes to the LLC. It actually, you as the developer now, and this is in South Korea, as I read the article, you're now personally responsible for any damages, whether they were negligent or not. So I think what they're trying to do is, if you're a developer, you have to really think about what you're doing, because even if you didn't try to maybe say have a kid put up $65,000 in your in-app purchase game, if it happens, you're responsible for the damages of which you cause. So they're trying to make the developer, I guess, more aware of all the data they're collecting, how they're collecting it, how they're trying to, because there's a lot of games that are just kind of they're free trials, but you can't play the game unless you do in-app purchases. So I think they're trying to make that business model less viable, and as they're doing that, they're making you more cautious, which makes you develop your game more cautiously, which then I think slowly will turn the way that mobile apps and games are created. Hopefully, I guess what they're thinking is on a global scale, is more centric to what the user would really want to happen with in-app purchases and with commerce and their data. So I think it's really interesting the way that they're going about it, because I don't know if that ruling would ever happen in America, but it definitely happened in South Korea.
Yeah, well, it's a fair point, because there was another article in TechCrunch where specifically when you're talking about employees, the employees of companies like Amazon, where internally they know that it's a problem, but then it still continues to happen. So
Right. What's my incentive to stop this money from flowing in? Like, yes, these parents are accidentally, their kids are accidentally sending me more money, and then I believe I believe the quote was like, "This is nearly a house on fire problem." and that was in 2011, and they didn't instate a fix until I think it said like 2012 or 13. So it was kind of like, oh no, we know there's this problem, but there's no reason for us to abide by it because there's no teeth anywhere that are going to bite us when we get all this extra money. I do believe the Amazon said they refunded people who complained, but how many people didn't? You know.
Right, and that's the probably part of the issue is that, like you say, there's no reason, there's no incentive for someone to change if it's to their benefit for something to be broken. Not to say that they maliciously are out there trying to make money off people, but again, it's kind of like, well, you got to prioritize things, and well, we'll deal with that later.
Yeah.
I know Amazon for one didn't have any kind of parental controls when some of its devices first came out, so I'm kind of surprised that the FTC hasn't gone after them sooner.
Right. Well, I think half of that is that government processes are slow. And they go nowhere near as fast as the tech industry. It's just the opposite spectrum you're looking at. And since then, they have put in, fairly nice parental consent mechanisms where I was reading they have a keypad that you can put in so you can make sure that anything that's downloaded or any in-app purchase has to have a key, notice every time. They have the free time, which is everything is free. There's no outside APIs that are going to take data, or there's no in-app purchasing. It's just free time, so you can give it to a child and know that none of the data or anything is going to be taken. But that's all after they went to service in 2011 with their Fire, and then after they had all of these problems with in-app purchasing. So it might be FTC saying that you fixed the problem but not fast enough. But the way that that article was written in TechCrunch, it kind of sounded like the FTC might not have a strong battle against Amazon since they have put all these precautions in. And there's like one letter in the law, it's like reasonably possible that someone is doing it. So because there's reasonably wiggle room, it might not be a lock or open and shut case for FTC.
Well, that opens up an interesting question. I mean, Apple kind of got slammed by the FTC. They paid $32.5 million in refunds for parents. And, of course, Tim Cook said he didn't like that because he felt like that was kind of double dipping, double jeopardy. They'd already been hit with a class action lawsuit. They really, no matter how would you feel about Apple kind of pioneered this particular industry, right? I mean, they're the first ones to come out with the iPhone and then the iPad and things like that, and then we have a whole industry, a whole category of consumer electronics that this is not a problem that had ever existed before, at least not in this context. So I think it's interesting to see Apple get hit first and get hit so hard when there's other companies like you say, like Amazon, who didn't have any parental controls at all, and I have yet to see anything where Google is actually getting slapped.
Yeah. Half of that might be, critical mass. Did Amazon release their Fire? Did they have anywhere near as what Apple had? So maybe it was just they had a bigger target on their back. And then not going after Google. I know Google, there was a 30-minute to 15-minute window, and then the 15-minute window was said that that's no longer viable, right? Isn't there? I forget where it went.
Oh, yeah, right. So after you put your password in to make a purchase, then there was a window in which you could make purchases without having to re-enter a password, and yeah, that's been that was implemented, I guess, as a measure to protect consumers, and then maybe to some extent used to keep kids from buying apps that what they weren't supposed to, but it's been adjusted over time, and I don't really think that there's a. I mean, what do you think? Is there a premium spot where you could actually do that? I mean, it just not make any sense at all.
I honestly don't know what the stores have implemented, if it's less than 15 or if it's 10 or if it's 5. I know that there was an argument for 30 and then went down to 15, but I'm unfortunately unsure if it went down from 15. Again,
yeah, I'm sure it depends on who you talk to, right? Because I actually like that once I've entered my password, I can buy a few additional apps and not have to enter it again and again and again.
Right. You have to weigh the options of, do you want more user friction when they're trying to buy things in your app store, which you get 30% of, or do you want to make sure that children aren't buying things that they're not supposed to because of that window? So it's. For usability, it's great to not only have to put it in once for 30 minutes. For giving it to a child, you download an app and you give them the phone, it's horrible because now I just bought 60,000 Smurf berries and you have to remortgage your house because of an app.
Right. I did see there was one thing that said the FTC pointed out there was a case where a child spent $2,600 alone in an app, and I'm like, wow. That's just, I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of paranoid about those types of things. When I first got the Kindle Fire, I made sure that, the kids didn't have their own separate accounts. That way, anytime there was a purchase, I got a notification about it. And the same thing with Apple devices. We've always had, one unified account. But now Apple's moving to a more segmented approach where everybody can have their own account. So you guys think that will help? Does anybody see that as a benefit? Yeah, everybody's on mute. Okay.
I was going to let everyone else answer. I've been talking too much.
Well, okay. So let's move on to what AgeCheq does. Before the show started, you were saying that it really is broken down into more than just in-app purchases. It has more to do with, there's privacy in other realms. So give us a breakdown of how this actually works. So
the FTC enforces three things when it comes to children, roughly, and that's content, then it's commerce, and then it's privacy. So what's in the news right now is commerce. It's people being upset that their money is being taken by these seemingly malicious, maybe unintentional, but in the end result, they're losing money when they shouldn't be, or kids are buying way more than they should have been allowed, and the FTC is going after the stores saying that's not right. What we have in COPPA, or COPPA, I think it's actually different on the West Coast. Everyone says COPPA. Everyone on the East Coast says COPPA. So it's pick whichever way you want to say it. With that, it's actually targeting privacy. It's making sure that data that's being collected from kids isn't used maliciously. I mean, right now, ad networks are in almost every app, and there's no approval from the parent, or at least they don't know that they're approving that there's going to be tons of analytical data points collected on their 2-year-old child making an app, because all they see is a privacy disclosure or a privacy policy, which is 8-point text, 15 pages long, and written like a lawyer. So no parent understands what that's saying. Yeah, you want this game? Here you go. I'll put it in. Go play with it, and I'm good. The problem being that the parent doesn't really know what that app's doing, and there's a lot of malicious things that are being doing with kids' data. Maybe not even, again, not malicious, but a lot of data is being collected on kids. It could be photos, could be audio, could be video, and the kid has no idea that he's holding a supercomputer in his hand. He doesn't understand he's connected to literally everyone in the world by the internet. So you need some safeguards in there, and that's what the FTC has done and tried to do with updating COPPA, is put in safeguards for children to then be able to play on mobile devices and be able to use downloading apps and everything, but in a way where the parent is informed, the parent knows what's happening, and the developer is disclosing all of the things that he's doing in the app to make sure that there's transparency there. Parent knows what's going to happen when the kid gets the phone. I know what I'm telling you what I'm doing. I know everything that the third parties are doing, and I'm telling you what they're doing inside the app, so there's no confusion. You should say, yes, I understand what you're doing in my app, I approve it, or no, I don't like that you're going to post pictures to Facebook, I don't want your app. So that's kind of the main idea behind COPPA. I have a quick PowerPoint that goes behind how AgeCheq kind of makes this work, because there's a lot of, because it's a law and it was written by lawyers, there's a lot of caveats in it, and when you get into mixing tech with lawyers, it's really hard, because usually the law has good intent, but it doesn't understand how the mechanics of the gaming industry mobile apps work. So there's a lot of things that don't make sense, and I'll kind of get into them and how we get it around and make you compliant.
My favorite cartoon on that is the South Park. You guys have seen the South Park cartoon where they're like, hey, the Apple guys are here, and they want to take me away because they say I signed something in their user agreement. And the kids on the playground are like, didn't you read that thing? And he's like, who reads that thing? And every time it pops up,
It's a fairly good one.
Yeah, I love it. It's exactly how you feel. It's like like you say, it's it's very small, it's very long, and it's written in a way that's very confusing.
Yeah, let me just start screen sharing here. It'll be a little inception for a little bit. Can you guys see that?
Sure can, yeah.
All right, well, I was going to go over what COPPA is, but I kind of already did that intro. It basically targets personally identifiable information. And what that means is any bit of data that can be traced back to a person, to a child. And that is UDID, device ID, MAC address, as defined by the law, pretty much anything, any point of data, username, unique identifier online. If you collect that and you have a reasonable assumption that there's a child playing your game, you have to be compliant with COPPA. The downside of, especially for indie developers, is that it's up to a $16,000 per child fine if you are caught not being COPPA compliant and using data maliciously. So if you're not complying with the law, there could be a lot of ramifications for you, especially indie. And then on top of that, you get audited for the next 20 years on your privacy to make sure you are maintaining privacy. So even if you're a big corporation, going through a security audit every year is just going to take a lot of time and money from your main core business model. So no one really wants to get caught. How do you comply with it? FTC has released a 6-step compliance plan, and this is, I'm just going to kind of go through this and then say how AgeCheq kind of fits into helping you get around or complying with the law. First, again, determine, do you need to be COPPA compliant? If you're a game that's a one-time purchase in a store and you collect no data, you don't use ads, excuse me, then you're fine. If you don't collect any personally identifiable information, or if your game is, M-rated or mature content to the point where no kid should be playing it, there's a reasonable assumption that there won't be kids under 13, and you don't really have to comply. But if you're a general audience game, something like, say, Angry Birds, obviously, you would have a general audience, so you would have to kind of assume that there's under 13 kids. So then
you haven't seen me play Angry Birds.
It's clearly not just kids, but if there's a reasonable expectation, yeah.
It gets an M rating.
So the first thing you have to do is post a privacy policy that complies with COPPA. The main idea is that, like I said, 8-point font. There's like 36 pages. No one can understand what they're saying unless you have a law degree. What you have to do is you bring that down to a level where the parent can understand. So here is AgeCheq's privacy disclosure that we create. It's database driven, and we call it a layered privacy disclosure because there's the privacy policy, and then this is the UI on top that's saying, okay, we're going to collect and store your IP address. There's advertising in this app. Child's age is going to be collected and stored. We're going to share the device ID. So it's really transparent to say, this is what your data is going to be doing inside this app. That's what it looks like for a developer to actually create one of these. It's fairly simple. You just go in and you select some of the drop-down menus. So yes, I collect IP address. No, I don't. And then from there, this is one of the big headaches if you don't use some sort of ecosystem like AgeCheq. A developer has to also say what a third party does. So if I use, say, Millennial, and I put them in my app as an ad network, and I don't know what they collect data-wise, but I'm putting their SDK in, I'm liable to then disclose that to the parent. So I need to then call Millennial or get a personal relationship with any ad network I'm using to get them to tell me and certify and say, yes, that is what we collect. So then I can then disclose it to all of my users. It's very, very time-consuming, and as an indie dev, you're just trying to make a game and get it out. So what we do is we just have a drop-down menu. It's pre-populated with all of the data that most the bigger we're continually expanding our network. But so if you have an advertiser, you just click, okay, I can use Millennial. We'll auto-inject that into the privacy disclosure page that you need to generate for the parent. So you don't really have to do any of that communication. We do that for you.
So before you go on there, so just to make sure anybody listening understands, you have to provide a privacy policy in order to be compliant, and
that used to be the old one. Now it's a privacy policy and a disclosure, which is simplified for a parent to understand.
Okay.
So there's 2 layers.
Okay, so it can't just be legalese; it has to be something that's actually useful.
Yes.
And if you do business with any third party, you need to make that as transparent as possible as well, so that the parents can understand what's going on.
So not just saying, yes, I use Millennial, but yes, I use Millennial, and now your IP address is going to be collected, stored, and shared.
Okay. So what you're saying is that without something like AgeCheq, the developer would have to implement this on their own, but AgeCheq helps them do that. Is that what I hear?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is, again, as I keep going, it's kind of like it's pebbles on a pile, because there's just so much things for an indie dev to do that's fairly difficult. But
okay.
Yeah, that's the first step. Well, another thing we do to to help the ease of that is that since it's database driven, if you change anything inside your app, you take out a third party, put in a new one. Instead of having to go and edit the code of wherever yours lives online, you change the drop-down menu. Next time it's served, it's automatically updated, so everyone is still getting the up-to-date information right when you hit save. So all parents will always be informed on your changes.
Now is this? I'm sorry, I want to keep it around for you, but I want to make sure I'm clear. This privacy policy is this when you say it's generated? Is it generated and it lives on your website, or is it generated and it lives in your app, or
it lives in your app? Well, wherever it's generated, we have a database, and then the parent would see it in the parent dashboard. I guess I'm going to answer all these questions in the next couple slides.
Okay, keep going. Okay.
So yeah, I'll just show you the UI of what they'll see. So you have to notify parents directly before collecting personally identifiable information. So the parent has to see the privacy disclosure that you've made before the child can play the game, because obviously it wouldn't make sense if they could collect all this data and then ask the parent if it's cool. So you have to verify or ask first. So this is what the parent would see in the parent dashboard, and you see this giant approve button, and you can view the full privacy policy. So you always have to have that as an option as well, as defined by the law. You have to have the lower level and the above level. You also need a parent's verifiable consent before collecting information, and this is the biggest friction point of COPPA for mobile developers, and especially game developers. You now have to have a personal relationship with every parent of every game before the child has played it to say, yes, it's okay for them to play this. So the law dictates a couple ways, one of them being a mail-in form, so the person prints out a form, signs it, folds it up, and mails it to you. And after a week, you get it, and you say, okay, now you can play the game. So that doesn't work. There's 5 different ways they say. Another one's a credit card transaction that you can get authentication of a verified parent. Another one is Email Plus, which doesn't work unless you have no third parties and your online service. So what we've done at AgeCheq is we've took the 2 that are most viable, which is a form and a credit card transaction. And now that we have the verified parent's consent, we now tell you that it's authorized by a verified parent. So instead of the parent having to get every single game developer consent through a written form, they do it once with us through a transaction written form, and then from that point on, anytime that you integrate with AgeCheq, as they hit approve, you know that they're verified because they're inside our dashboard, and we've already done that for you. So that's the other thing. It's the clearinghouse, the central clearinghouse for COPPA compliance, because otherwise the whole industry breaks if everyone has to talk to each other all the time. It just doesn't, it's not viable. And this is what the parent dashboard looks like. So over here you kind of see view privacy disclosure. That's where it would pop up. I know you were asking about that earlier. But it would also, when you hit the authorize button, it would pop up and say, do you want to authorize this? You scroll down, hit approve, and then you'd see something like this where it's already said authorized. So yeah, that would pop up when they say, okay, I want to authorize. It shows you the disclosure form that we automatically generated from the developer. They say it's okay, and then they can go on and the app will be approved. Did you have a question? I heard some.
Yeah, I just, do you recommend that the developers put this just on their website out and then it link to it from the app, or is this something like they can see in the app? I'm trying to understand the flow of it from the parent's perspective. And how
from the parent's perspective, they would sign up for an AgeCheq account, verify their parent identification, and then from that point on, every app that uses AgeCheq would be manageable inside their dashboard, whether they want to approve it or not. And that's where all the privacy disclosures that are generated are served to the parent. So if I wanted to approve this game called Pang, which was created by a user, I would type in, up here in the top right, you can see the username's my demo parent. So I type in my demo parent to tie it because it's a unique identifier to the account, and hit tie or hit sync. And at that point, Pang knows that I'm on this demo account, or I'm on this parent account, and I can then authorize it through the dashboard because the dashboard now knows, okay, Pang is talking to this parent. They need to have the disclosure page. He said, okay, you're okay to go. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and so this is on a per child basis, per app basis, per developer basis? How's that?
It's a per app basis.
Okay.
So yeah, if you have 4 apps, you get inside the developer portal, you get different app IDs when you create a new app. Obviously, if the parent says yes to Corona, every Corona app wouldn't be authorized. It would be yes to Corona game 1, and then that one would be authorized. So it's not by developer, but it's by game account, so that they can see what each game and what app is going to do before they approve it.
Brian, did you have any questions?
I'm got too many. Keep going.
Okay, okay.
As far as the demo goes, I really tried to make this a quick one, so it's not as in depth as these questions again. I guess I should have maybe extended it a little bit, but yeah, I can go into the actual website and screen share and show you how it works on live. This is all just screenshots and pictures, okay. So it might be a little bit less contextual, or yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, you link to the developer's privacy policy available, and you honor the parents' ongoing rights in respect to information collected from their kids. This one is again very difficult for users or for developers. What this basically says in the law is that if a parent sees a disclosure, says, okay, I approve this, authorizes it, the kid plays the game for 5 weeks, takes a bad picture, puts it on Facebook, parent finds out that that's where the picture came from, says, that's it. I want to delete all data you've ever collected from my child. You need to do it now. So at that point, and the parent has the right to do that, you as a developer have to delete all the information from that child, and you're also responsible to tell any third party that's inside your app to delete the data from that child. So that's kind of, when you have a critical mass, say 100,000 users and 2 to 3 people revoke, it's really hard for you to tell each third-party developer every time you get it. So what AgeCheq does is we actually already have that relationship, since we have the drop-down menu and what they collect. Excuse me. We send them a revocation that they need to revoke and delete all this data, and we tell you, hey, user 123 has asked you to delete all data. So then you just go in your database and then you'll delete that, so that you are then COPPA compliant. So you have to give the parent the right to destroy the data that you've collected from a child.
That's an interesting topic all by itself, because I know as a developer you never delete anything. You just
right.
Mark it. You just flag it as not show and that sort of thing. So I wonder, has there any? When we talk about this later, but have there been any cases where the data wasn't actually deleted? It was just not made available.
So far,
ask Google about that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah.
This is the COPPA 2, the revised COPPA that went into effect July 2013. So far, no one has been fined under this law yet, so there's no precedent at this point, but this is what the law dictates and spells out inside of it. And if you look at the FTC fact, they go over how you have to manage kids' data. So there's teeth on this bill with the $16,000 fine, the 20-year audits. They just haven't sunk down into anyone yet to give the full realization of what this problem is. When that happens, then I feel like the whole gaming industry is going to throw its hands in the air with their hair on fire and try to figure out how to get around or how to comply with this law. Because at this point, a lot of people aren't. So it's kind of hard to say where they draw the line since they haven't drawn the line yet. But I'm fairly certain if you're saying we're deleting data and they come into your databases and you're not deleting data, you're going to have a problem.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple of things that I see. First of all, if you're not doing in-app purchase, if you are dependent upon advertisement revenue for your apps, most of them, iAd, AdMob, InMobi, have a checkbox when you're creating the app that allows you to specify that this app could be used by under age 13.
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay.
as I understand, and please correct me if I'm totally wrong, if I'm not collecting personal data, that is also supposed to keep the ad company from collecting personal data, and so you're COPPA compliant.
That would be wrong.
Okay.
In that, just because the ad agency said that it's okay, we know that this is 13. If you're collecting no other piece of data, if you just say all I need to do is I need one username and I'm using that only for internal operations to manage a data set of this guy, who I have no idea who it's about. I don't give any data to anybody, and my ad networks have told me they're not going to collect anything on a 13-year-old. The question would be, how do they know it's someone who's under 13?
Well, and that's through the checkbox that this ad will be, or app will be used by, potentially by people that are under the age of 13.
Right.
Which is supposed to put a restriction on them.
If the ad network is still, because they still serve ads, correct?
Right.
So when they still serve ads, they're doing something with analytics. They're doing something with clicks per, CPMs. They're doing something with the data and putting it elsewhere. Even though they know it's under 13, you're responsible for any data that they collect inside your app as a developer. So if they're serving ads, I can't imagine they're not doing anything else with data inside an app. So then you would have to disclose that you're serving ads to the parent before you got.
Right, and if you're including that in your privacy policy that ads are being served.
Right, but that's where it gets tricky. You also have to disclose whatever they're doing with that data. So now you have to call up InMovie, and you have to say, okay, so what are you doing with the data when I click this checkbox, so I can tell my parents, so that I can get verified parental consent before the kid sees it.
So 99.99% of the apps out there that are not using some kind of tool like AgeCheq are not COPPA compliant.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Is everybody afraid now?
Well, there's a lot of kid-centric games. When you focus only on kids, like learn how to read, they're extremely aware with COPPA and all of the lines they have to be in, because there's no wiggle.
Those are going to charge for it and not use ads inside of it, and they're going to.
I've talked to a couple developers. They take video and they actually put it up in the cloud, and other people watch each other's video to learn, and it's kind of like a classroom that's remote. It's a really cool idea. But they had they built their own giant COPPA compliance system, and they had the problem of which I said, they have to get a personal relationship with every parent and get it verified every time. But they do comply with the law. So there are definitely developers out there. Right now it's kid-centric, but I feel as time grows, the whole industry will see that you have to comply with this and manage kids' data correctly.
So, the way I'm hearing this is basically if I wanted to make if Flappy Bird didn't exist, and I made Flappy Bird the way it is or was with the ad network, and I don't know what the ad networks are doing, my game wouldn't be COPPA compliant, and I would be screwed if they did something bad.
Yes. You would not be COPPA compliant if you used an ad network and didn't have verified parental consent for the child.
So I guess the question I have to ask is what is Apple going to do? Just like get rid of all the games that are on the store?
Well, it's not Apple's problem. It's developer to developer basis. They're not liable. That's why I'm saying the developer's liable.
So basically, it's if you get caught and you're doing something bad, then you're screwed. Sorry.
I guess that's kind of.
I'm just so shocked by the whole. I mean, I guess I've heard this before, but until seeing this today, it really just didn't bring it home how heinous this is as far as responsibility for small developers.
Right. So it's kind of the whole industry. So it's not. I mean, that's kind of the reaction we get a lot. Is a lot of people don't know about either the new ruling of COPPA, or they didn't know this extent of everything it defines you have to do. So as I said, most of what we do right now is education on the problem that is over a lot of game developers' heads right now, and trying to make it as frictionless as just legally possible, and as easy for developers to integrate with, and as easy for we just want this COPPA thing to be no one's problem, because it really hurts a lot of models, especially on the mobile realm, where like adding another click loses 15% of your user base. Now you have to do a mail-in form. It's just.
I don't know who wrote that law, but that person did not know jack about how this works.
And now we're trying to fix that. We're trying to make that a technologically reasonable thing to actually accomplish.
Well, I mean, it comes down to like what we were talking before the show. When you get legislators involved in the process, right? They're going to try. They're not technologists, so they're going to try to provide a least common denominator way for someone to be able to send in their consent. And we all know that printing something out on a piece of paper, while it sounds like it's Neanderthal sort of
1950s.
1950s, yeah. But it still works, right? I mean, you can still do it.
It does
It's
not
still
work. I
no,
don't.
no. I'm just saying conceptually.
Not even conceptually. Printing something on a piece of paper and sending it in, that function works. But using that as a model for getting approval does not work.
And that's why we made the whole AgeCheq verification process and dashboards, so that now that problem, even though it still exists, that parent does one form, signs it,
No,
sends
I
it to
understand
us.
what you're saying.
Yeah. So
And your idea, this is a sound idea, and I like it. I'm not complaining about your thing at all. I mean, if anything, all my complaints right now should bolster your service, your product here. But
Well, I think from now on, I'm checking that all my games are for 13 and above.
I know
that also
Go through the
won't
process.
get you out of it, unfortunately, because if there's based on the content of your app, so if there's a lot of candy per se, or if there's a lot of cartoons and the language is kind of geared towards children, even though you say it's for 13 and up, you can't use that as disclaimer. But there is another form of what do you call it? There's another form of sifting out children from non, which would be an age gate, which the law does talk about. So if you have a general purpose app, say you're 13 and older, but there's a possibility that 12-year-olds will be playing your game, you can do an age gate. You have to create the age gate as to make sure that the child doesn't falsify. So you can't be like, you have to be 13 to play this. Do the math. You have to say, hey, what's your age? We'd like to know. And at that point, if they're under the age of 13, then you can either A, send them through AgeCheq COPPA compliance system to verify and give verified parental consent so that child can play your game, or B, you can turn off literally anything and everything that would collect any data and let them play the game without any ads, without any in-app purchasing, without any of data collection. So at that point, you have a free user. But the one thing you can't do is you can't throw that user away. In the law, it says if you know that someone's under the age of 13, you cannot block them from the content. You have to do one of those two things. So as you get deeper into the law, this thing is, I mean, there's tons of little caveats and stuff, but there's a lot of different ways that you can implement and try to get the least amount of friction on your user acquisition.
Did I use the word heinous already? Maybe I could use the word draconian after that.
I was actually wondering, I'm in the process of writing and publishing 10 ebooks for kids to teach about personal finance, and I'm getting them over to Apple and I'm going to publish them all as a block, so in the fall I'm going to publish them all at once. And I'm having them approved as for age 9 through 12. So it seems to me that offers a certain amount of protection, because Apple has those checks that, if you're submitting for an app for kids, that you have some hopefully a little protection. I don't have ads in it. I have a parental gate around sending people to my website so that they can download the rest of the apps. I'm trying to be as careful as I can, but this is kind of freaky.
It sounds like, though, that you're not collecting any data, and you're not using any third-party tools that you don't know what they're doing.
Correct.
Yeah, you should be fine.
And I think that if you submit for inclusion in the 9 to 12 or in the apps for kids category, there's 3 of them. You can't have that stuff in there anyway.
Right.
You can't be collecting, like my app Gabbler got rejected for that age category because I have to have the kids log in, because I have to collect scores, and it's integrated with Key. So I just said screw it, then I'm not. But that's actually an app that I think I need to revisit.
So Tyler, do you mentioned doing a math problem? Do you guys provide that sort of functionality, or is that something separate?
Do a math problem? Can you elaborate?
A parental gate.
A parental gate.
Oh yeah. Okay. We have actually integrated parental gates inside of our API. So if a user goes to one game and there's a age gate, and they pump in that information, there's an API that you can tell us that info, and then we just associate it with that account. So when that account comes to game number 2, you can just hit a check call, request back from the server, hey, how old is this user? And it can say there's a true and false for under 13, and then there's a true false for under 18. and then we actually give you the day and time they put in. So we do associate AgeGate information, so you don't even have to ask them really if you are smart enough with how you integrate our SDK. So if they come in, you get their username, you're like, okay, well let me check this information. Are they under 13? No. Okay, well I don't have to do anything because they already answered an AgeGate elsewhere. Do you know what I mean? So we try to even make AgeGates as simple as you can. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I just wanted to know if it was something that would be, we would have to, again, something that the developer would have to implement separate from AgeCheq, or if it was something that was integrated into it directly. Yeah,
you'd integrate the UI, but in the Corona SDK that I completed, there's AgeGate already there. The UI's there, but you'd have to kind of, rip it out of the SDK and put it inside your game.
Okay. So I see we've made it to the 5th point here. What's the? Go ahead with your presentation list.
Oh, I was just gonna back out. All this is fairly none. It was just going over the last thing is secure databases. So don't have like a MySQL query go through your whole database. And secure it, MD5 hash. Make sure that just take reasonable steps. Don't be a dummy, I guess is all that says. Especially when it's kids' data.
So I guess we could, to summarize, you could say that someone could handle this all on their own. They could be, it's like doing your own taxes, right? You do your own taxes.
It's a little worse than doing your own taxes, I would say, because when you do your own taxes, you don't get back 1/100th of what you were going to get anyways, just because you have that friction with every parent every time that you have to get their verified consent. So that makes it more difficult.
Right, but some, well, I guess to make the analogy more clear, some people, like my grandfather came from the Great Depression, and he would do his own taxes because that's how interested he was in the topic. Now, whether or not it was advantageous for him to do it or not, he just decided that's what he was going to do. Right? That was his thing. He wanted to know all about the tax laws, and he kept up on everything, and he. He had been to audits and he knew kind of how to answer the questions and all that kind of stuff. That was his bag. For someone else, though, that's very time-consuming, very tedious. You have to keep up with all the laws. You have to keep up with you have to keep your system secure. You have to do all those things. That sounds like a kind of a drag, especially when all you really want to do is be creative and come out with the ideas and develop a game or some sort of children's app. So I guess what I'm saying is that it sounds like a developer could do this if they were so inclined. There's a lot to it, but you guys provide this as a service where they can just sort of check the box and say, done, and you handle the compliance and keeping up with the rules and making sure that the systems are secure and that everything is good to go.
Well, the two things we don't do are the first one, which is determine that your company needs COPPA compliance, because you have to do that. And the sixth one, we don't touch any of your databases. So you have to make you have to secure the data. So we don't secure any data. We're a flag, we're sending messages to and from parents, to and from, third parties, from developers. We're really just in the middle of everyone, making everyone connect and talk to each other instantly instead of having to do it your own. But yeah, other than that, it's.
Okay, gotcha. So really, providing clarity in the privacy policy space and communication between all the parties involved. That's really AgeCheq and what its value proposition.
And verifying parents, making sure that it's actually a parent, which is kind of the biggest issue.
Well, let's move on to some of the follow-up questions in here then, because I've got a few here. So Apple is coming out supposedly, not supposedly. I guess they've already said it in their developer conference. They're coming out with this Ask to Buy feature. How will that affect, at least in one app store? How will that affect something like this?
What do you mean Ask to Buy? I guess I'm not up to date on that.
Yeah. So on the WWDC or whatever, they came up with. Apple's going to be coming out with this Ask to Buy feature, basically where the child has on their device, the child has an app that requires parental approval, and they click it, and then the parent gets a notification that says they have to approve it before the child can buy.
That was under Family Share, right?
It's kind of
a Family Share.
Yeah, again, I mean it's kind of this evolution of technology, right? I mean it's like we were talking about before. At some point, Amazon didn't even have any parental controls when they released their devices, and they've slowly rolled this thing out. So the FTC is kind of all in everybody's business, but at the same time, Apple is kind of like, oh, well, September we're coming out with something, in the fall, whatever. They were coming out with something that addresses this. So how do you think that Ask to Buy will it improve, or does it not go far enough, or?
I don't think it'll go far enough, just based on how the law's written, and the disclosure to the parent for the purchase would not be, this is all of the data the app is collecting, to my understanding. It would be, is it cool to download this game? Is this game, so that might go under the content branch of, is it okay if he gets Serial Killer Murder Blitz on his iPad? Or is it okay if Happy Go Bunnies is collecting all Facebook images from his Facebook profile? So it gets weird, because you're not talking about content, but you kind of are, because it's with children. So it gets all messed up in the, you get your chocolate and your peanut butter there. But
so yeah, okay. So yeah, I get you. It goes.
It's helping. It's getting there. That's you finally have a mechanism for there, but if it doesn't give it a privacy disclosure of what's going to be collected, if it doesn't tell them the privacy that they're going to be collecting from the child, then it doesn't actually affect COPPA. It would be more of the commerce issue that Apple has been nailed with. So you know what I mean? It might actually be a response to them being nailed for $32.5 million instead of a response to this COPPA law.
Yeah, right. Well, and again, we had that discussion before the show started that it would be good to for the technology companies to come up with an answer to the problem from a technology standpoint, and not necessarily get their legislators involved. But sometimes that kind of thing puts pressure on companies and makes them do things that they wouldn't otherwise do. So I think that's a good thing. That said, like you mentioned earlier, the legal process, the legislative process is very slow. I mean, some of these arguments are all the way back from 2011, and now we're just now getting, the FTC is just now getting around to saying, look, no, we really mean it. You have to do something about it. So, what do you, this obviously is AgeCheq is obviously a solution that goes across all the different app stores. So, do you think that do you see AgeCheq as maybe being a solution that could be eventually acquired by, or be just an intermediary for? Is there a path forward for AgeCheq? You guys trying to be like the all one-stop shop for all of it?
Yeah, I don't know about any acquisition, but we're trying to become the central clearinghouse for verified parental consent. So that no one else has to worry about it. We would love to be the dashboard that every parent goes to understand what each app is doing with their child's data, and that each main developer uses to show, okay, this is the easiest mechanism for parents to actually understand the content. Because as a privacy advocate, I think the world is continually growing faster and faster, and especially like I don't know if it was before the call or not, but I was talking about children have smartphones. They can connect to the entire world instantly and tweet a picture, and it goes everywhere. It's written in ink. And as our technology has exponentially gotten cooler and faster and stronger, our security for it has clearly not. And especially when it comes to protecting children's rights and understanding that the user might not know at all what they're doing. I think this law is trying to make tech companies catch up with that. So,
yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because there was an FAQ. You'd mentioned that about there's an FAQ on this kind of stuff from I think the FTC, and I was going through that before the show, looking at and seeing kind of what information they were communicating to people. And from a technology, from a developer standpoint, all of us look at it and go, well, yeah, that makes sense, right? Yeah, but for them, it was kind of like, how's my information being used? What data is being passed? I mean, there was all this kind of, it's common sense kind of stuff, or at least common sense questions that people would want to know, but spelled out in a more clearly defined language than how we as developers might say it. So I don't think that's, it's nothing. It's no magic involved. It's just plain spoken communication between the consumer and the product owner. So.
The more I think about this, this is just the maturation of the app development community. We've been around now for, 6 years? we can talk about serious mobile application development, and it's going to first grade this fall. It's a 6-year-old now. It's time for it to start standing up, walking, and being able to not pee the bed. We're into a new era,
I hate
and
when
we're
I
going
have to
to
do that.
continue to see this. Okay, yes, and pee the bed. This is going to eventually get rid of a lot of the junkware that's out there on the App Store. Apple talks about how many millions or billions of apps that are out there, but the majority of them are junk. They're freeware, they're freemium, they're not. They're just ad supported, and they really have little to no value. It's going to put it back into the hands of those that are really serious about mobile app development, to be able to do the development or make the investment in something like AgeCheq, if you are going to. And that, again, it puts another hurdle in there that we're going to be separating the people that are serious about it and really want to do this from the people that are not serious about it.
Yeah, I don't know how anybody else feels, but I always think of the pioneer days where they all line up in a row. Somebody fires a gun and everybody runs out and stakes their claim, right? So it's a land grab. And then at some point, you have to build roads and infrastructure and telephone lines and electricity and running water.
This is what's happening. And AgeCheq is the first set of real roads that we're putting in to be able to do this. It's the start of that infrastructure to be able to support it. Now, I know that the one big question that everybody's really wondering about as a developer, what's this going to cost me?
No, good question.
For developers, we have a free. You can become completely COPPA compliant for free, and parents can sign up for free if they do the form and fax it in, or if they pay. Obviously we have to do a credit card transaction to verify.
Now, what's that cost to the parent to do that if they're doing a credit? Because as a parent, I'm not going to fax a form in and make my kid wait a week or a couple of days for them to be able to play the game that I just downloaded from the store.
Right now, I believe it's $4.99, but then you get a complete new parent dashboard that has a lot more stuff than on the free account, which would be more control over when you authorize or deauthorize apps. So you could block them, say, after Timmy's bedtime, 8 p.m., block all apps on his iPad so they won't open up. So that kind of goes in lines with giving the parent control over when the data is collected or not. We give them a mechanism to block an app if they want to block it in the parent dashboard.
Okay.
So am I hearing that the SDK and stuff is free for the developer, but the parent is the one who is paying for premium services? Is that what we're saying?
Well, we wanted to give value for the transaction that we had to do to verify them, but they can also do the free one, and we are working on a lot of different ways to allow different forms of mechanism that aren't approved yet. Like the law says you're allowed to have a call center, and people can verify the parent over the call center, which is just unviable. But if you do something like Twilio, or something that has an API to it, we're working through all of these other forms of verification and trying to get some approved so that it's not as friction filled. These lawmakers wrote it initially. They want more comments from the tech industry, so we're trying to say, hey, it'd be really awesome if you did this, so that parents don't have to mail a form. So until that's updated, which again, government, it goes slow. We're kind of forced with what is approved black and white right now. But again, you can have a free parent account, and if you do pay for one, you never have to verify your age again. So it's one-time purchase, and then you have AgeCheq parent account. But the developer's free, and for indie devs, and then when you get over, I think 2 million MAUs, then it becomes paid. So it's kind of I forget what you call it. Online service. Was it VPC? Verified Parental Consent Service, I guess is what we called it.
Okay.
I don't remember. We found a lot of letters that we could put together, and they spell something 14 letters wide, and it'd be great.
Right. All right. Well, anybody who is interested in that sort of thing, which we all should be, go check out AgeCheq, AgeCheq.com.
And hey, the sign up is simple. I did it during the show. It took like 30 seconds. I'm now a signed up user developer for AgeCheq and can add apps and start using it immediately. It is very simple to use as a developer.
Yeah, if anyone wants to use it for Corona SDK, we do have a video walkthrough. I did a tutorial blog post for you guys, and if anyone has any questions, you can just email me at tyler@agecheq.com, and I'd be glad to answer them.
Excellent. Thank you, Tyler. Yeah, we'll definitely link to the tutorial in the show notes so that people can use the Corona SDK integration to add this to their apps. Yeah, I think that's it. I don't know if there's anything else that we can cover today, but do go check that out, and it sounds like a good thing. And like Brian said, I think it's a maturing of the industry, and we're going to need to address these things going forward, and especially with everything that's going on in the news. I mean, it's just becoming a highlighted conversation. So privacy is going to be probably next on the agenda.
And this is not something you want to put off. This is something you need to be on the forefront of, ahead of, so that you're not getting some of those fines. Putting this off is like putting off learning how to read as a first grader. You're going to pay for it later.
Actually, I'd have to say, Brian, as Indy, getting just one of those fines would be the end of the world. So.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not good. Yeah, well,
but
I'm
then
sure
you get to get audited. That's the best part.
Right.
Yeah.
20-year
audits.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. A 20-year audit, and it's only the industry's only been around for 6.
Right. Yeah, that would be. I think that would be more costly than the initial fine.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Tyler. We appreciate you being here and sharing all that information with us. I do encourage you guys to go check out the website. They have a lot of information there as well. I think you guys are doing a great job there, Tyler, on educating people as to what they need to be doing and what they need to be concerned about and how the industry is evolving over time. So check that out at AgeCheq.com. I want to remind everybody before we close out that we have the 100th show coming up next week, which is fantastic. 100 hangouts here on Corona Geek. I will thank you guys next week, but I definitely want to thank everybody who's here on the panel today and everybody who's listening for supporting the show. It's been fantastic. And we actually put out a form this week. I shared it on Twitter and Facebook and all the other social media channels where you can go and ask questions, and those questions will be answered on show 101. We're going to have a Corona staff panel, and hopefully get Walter and Albert and Brent and Rob here on the panel and answer some of your questions. Maybe go through some of the technical bits, maybe some of the higher level business aspects of things, and that sort of thing. So we'll have an hour just like we always do. So I'll put a link in the show notes, but go check it out on social media. Leave us a question. Let us know exactly what it is that you want, and if your question gets answered, we will send you some sort of little trinket. We haven't figured out exactly what that will be yet. It might be some stickers, it might be a T-shirt, but there will be some.
Maybe a T-shirt for the best question.
Yeah, there we go. We'll make it. We have to level up or something, maybe. But anyway, so check out that, and be sure to join us on August 4th, which will be in 2 weeks when we have show 101 and we celebrate 100 shows being recorded here on Google+. So I think that's it for this week. Guys, have a great week. Be careful out there, and happy coding.
Bye.